quite a storm raging out there. I can't even remember the last time it rained this hard. That damn beacon seems to be broken again. I will need to repair it while Thomas and Duncan are getting the supplies outside. Days, and just in time before Christmas.
December 15, 1900, 32 kilometers west of the Isle of Lewis, where civilization ended and the wilderness began, stood the Flannan Isles, 7 barren specks of land amid the churning sea. On Eilean Mòr, the largest of these desolate outcrops, a tower of granite and iron rose defiant against the elements. The Flannan Isles Lighthouse, barely 1 year in operation, casts its vital beam across 20 miles of dangerous waters, except the day where everything went dark. On that storm-wrecked night, the captain of the passing steamer Archtor noticed the darkness where the light should have been. The beacon had guided countless sailors through these waters had fallen silent. Thought concerning such occurrences weren't unheard of. Sometimes lamps malfunctioned or keepers struggled with equipment. The captain duly reported the outrage upon reaching Lake Harbor, setting in motion a chain of events that would trigger history's most enduring mysteries. Long before the lighthouse ever stood on Eilean Mòr, the isle carried a haunted reputation. Herbedian fishermen rarely set foot on Eilean Mòr, believing it was a sacred place. They spoke of the Other Ones, supernatural entities said to inhabit the island. Before landing, tradition demanded they remove their caps, kneel, and offer prayers for safe passage. Even then, no fisherman would spend the night there willingly. The island itself deemed designed to repel human presence. Sheer cliffs rose 150 feet above the sea level, accessible only via a narrow, treacherous landing stage on the eastern side. A zigzagging stairway carved into the rock face led to the summit plateau, where in December 1899, the newly completed lighthouse would first illuminate the night. James Ducat at 43 was the principal keeper, a veteran of the Northern Lighthouse Board with nearly 2 decades of experience. He was married with 4 children. Ducat was known for his meticulous attention to detail and steadfast reliability. His logbook entries were impeccable, his equipment maintenance beyond reproach. Colleagues described him as serious but fair, a man who took immense pride in his vital work. Thomas Marshall, 28, served as the second assistant keeper. Unmarried and ambitious, Marshall had risen quickly through his ranks. A former carpenter apprentice, his mechanical aptitude proved invaluable to the isolation of the lighthouse duty. His letters to his mother revealed a thoughtful man with aspirations of becoming a principal keeper himself one day. Donald McArthur, 40, was the occasional keeper, filling in temporarily while the regular third assistant recovered from illness. A local man from the Isle of Lewis. McArthur was married with 2 children. Even though he was relatively new to the lighthouse work, his experience with dangerous waters in the Herbedian weather made him a valuable addition to the team. Together, these three men formed the human heart of Eilean Mòr Lighthouse, maintaining the mechanism, polishing the lens, trimming the wicks, refilling the lamps with fuel, and meticulously recording weather conditions and passing ships. Their world was confined to the tower, the small adjacent living quarters, and the rocky plateau surrounding them. In fair weather, they might venture down to the landing stage to receive the supplies or fish for their dinner. In storms, they remained indoors. Their safety depended on the vigilance and each other's company. Their routine was strict, 2 men active on duty all times, with shift rotation so to allow each man 8 hours of rest. Isolation was the greatest enemy. The men combated it both with games of cards, reading, letter writing, and maintaining their logbooks. The latter both professional duty and a psychological anchor. On December 7, 1900, the relief vessel Hesperus had delivered Ducat, Marshall, and McArthur to Eilean Mòr, replacing the previous crew. The weather had been fair, the sea calm. James Carvey, the captain of the Hesperus, later recalled nothing unusual about the men or their demeanor as they disembarked onto the landing stage, eager to begin their rotation. The relief keeper who had completed his shift, Joseph Moore, remembered shaking hands with each man before boarding the vessel to return to the mainland. The Hesperus was scheduled to return on December 20th, bringing Christmas provisions and the next rotation of keepers. But the fierce winter storms delayed the departure from Lewis. Day after day, Captain Harvey waited for the break in weather, growing increasingly concerned about the men he left behind on the isolated rock. December 26th, the day after Christmas, with the storm finally calming down, the Hesperus set sail for Eilean Mòr, carrying Joseph Moore, the same keeper who departed just weeks earlier, along with fresh supplies and mail for the Lighthouse crew. As the vessel approached Eilean Mòr around noon, the absence of the landing flag immediately struck Captain Harvey as unusual. The provision box normally left on the landing stage to facilitate easy transfer of supplies was nowhere to be seen. Most troubling of all, there were no signs of keepers themselves. A standard protocol dictated that at least one keeper should greet the relief vessel. When no one appeared, Harvey sounded the Hesperus steam whistle. The sound echoed off the cliffs, met only by the cries of the seabirds who were flying above. A signal rocket was fired next, its bright flare arcing across the sky. Still no response came from the lighthouse tower. Moore volunteered to investigate. With 3 crewmen from Hesperus, he boarded a small dingy rowboat, cautiously moving to the eastern landing. The sea remained choppy, making their approach very hazardous. Upon reaching the landing stage, Moore later noted growing unease that the usual mooring ropes were missing. "I knew something was wrong," Moore later testified. "I had a feeling of dread in my stomach as we climbed those stairs." The ascent to the lighthouse took men 15 minutes, negotiating 160 steep, slippery steps cut into the rock face. When they reached the plateau, the lighthouse door was closed but unlocked, another violation of protocol. Moore hesitated before pushing it open, calling out the names of his colleagues. However, only silence answered him. Inside, the scene was both ordinary and profoundly disturbing. The clock in the living quarters has stopped. The table was set for a meal that has been never eaten. A chair laid on its side. The lamps were cleaned and filled with oil ready to be lit. The beds were made, suggesting that men had risen normally that morning. The fireplace was cold, its ashes long settled. Most tellingly, 2 sets of oilskin and boots were missing from their hooks by the door. Only Ducats remained in place, a detail later that would confuse the investigators. No man in his right mind would venture onto Eilean Mòr Plateau in December without having proper protection. After a thorough search of the lighthouse and the surrounding area, Moore was forced to accept the impossible. 3 experienced keepers had vanished without a trace from their isolated post. With the Hesperus unable to remain anchored in uncertain weather, Captain Harvey made the difficult decision to return to Lewis, leaving Moore and the 3 volunteers to maintain the lighthouse until a formal investigation could be launched. Before departing, Harvey composed a telegram to the Northern Lighthouse Board in Edinburgh. A dreadful accident has happened at the Flallans. The three keepers, Ducat, Marshall, and McArthur, have disappeared from the island. On our arrival there this afternoon, no signs of life was to be seen on the island, but as no response was made, managed to land Mòr, who went up to the station but found no keepers there. The clocks were stopped and other signs indicated that the accident must have happened about a week ago. Robert Muirhead arrived on Eilean Mòr on December 29th to conduct the Northern Light Board official inquiry. As the superintendent who had trained James Ducat, Muirhead brought not only the professional expertise but personal investment to the investigation. Muirhead constructed what would become the official explanation for the disappearance. I am of the opinion that most likely explanation is that the three men had gone down to the Western Landing on the afternoon of Saturday, December 15, to secure the box with the mooring ropes and the landing tackle which was kept on the trimway for use at that landing. The sea was rising and it appears probably that an exceptionally large wave or waves caught the men unaware, sweeping them off the rocks into the sea. The evidence points to the accident having occurred during daylight hours, possibly around 3 p.m., when the winter sun would be setting. Robert's explanation became the official verdict. The Northern Lighthouse Board recorded the cause as a misadventure, and the case would be formally closed. The families of Ducat, Marshall, and McArthur received compensation according to the board's regulations, and new keepers were assigned to Eilean Mòr. In the absence of definite answers, speculation flourished, much centered around the alleged entries in the lighthouse logs from the days leading up to the disappearance. Entries that, according to the official records, never existed, yet multiple newspapers reporting having them seen those mysterious notations, allegedly written by Thomas Marsh. December 12. Severe winds, the likes which I have never seen before. Ducat quiet, McArthur crying. December 13. Storm still raging, sea is still heaving. Never seen such persistent fury. Ducat quiet, McArthur praying. December 14. Storm quieted, sea calm. God is over all. These entries, if authentic, painted a disturbing picture of psychological deterioration. What could reduce a hardened lighthouse keeper to tears? What might render the experience Ducat abnormally silent? And why the sudden shift to religious sentiment in the final entry? The Northern Lighthouse Board denied the existence of these entries, maintaining that the logs contained nothing unusual beyond weather observations and routine notations about lamp maintenance. Yet the rumor still persisted, fueled by anonymous sources claiming to have seen the original documents before they were buried. In the century since the keeper's disappearance, three categories of explanation have emerged: the natural, the criminal, and the supernatural. The rogue wave theory proposed by Muirhead remains the most scientifically plausible explanation, such as a wave striking the western side of Eilean Mòr could theoretically wash over the landing stage and sweep away anyone in its path. A variation of this theory suggests that one keeper, likely McArthur, was taken by a smaller wave while working alone. His colleagues, hearing his cries, rushed to assist without taking time to equip the gear, only to be caught by subsequent waves themselves. Medical explanations have also been proposed. Food poisoning from tainted provisions might have caused hallucinations or irrational behavior. Carbon monoxide from coal-burning stove affected the men's judgment. These theories, however, fail to explain the physical disappearance of the three bodies. Thought less commonly accepted, criminal explanations cannot be entirely dismissed. Foreign agents seeking to disrupt British shipping lanes might have targeted the lighthouse, capturing or getting rid of the keepers to extinguish the vital beacon. The pre-World War I period saw escalating tensions between Britain and Germany, with naval supremacy as a key concern for both nations. Perhaps most disturbing is the theory of keeper-on-keeper violence. Prolonged isolation in cramped quarters has driven stronger men than these to madness. Did an argument escalate to murder? Did McArthur, known for his occasional temper, snap under the pressure of confinement? Without bodies or witnesses, such theories remain speculative at best, slanderous at worst. The Flannan Isles' ancient association with the otherworldly ensured that the supernatural explanations would inevitably emerge. The other ones, of Gaelic legend, neither human nor divine but something in between, were said to resent human intrusion onto their sacred lands. Did these entities take action against the lighthouse keepers for violating their domain? More modern paranormal theories involve alien abduction or interdimensional rifts. The remote location, the clean disappearance, the lack of bodies, all fit the certain pattern of a modern conspiracy. While such explanations find little support among serious investigators, they do still persist in popular culture, fueled by the human need to impose narrative structure on inexplicable events. Following the tragedy, the North Lighthouse Board implemented new regulations for all Scottish lighthouses. No keeper, regardless of the weather conditions or emergencies, was ever permitted to leave the lighthouse without at least one colleague remaining inside. Communication systems were upgraded to include wireless telegraphs, allowing regular check-ins with the mainland. Relief schedules were adjusted just to ensure more frequent rotations of the personnel, reducing the psychological strain of the isolation. Flannan Isles Lighthouse continued to operate with human keepers until August 28, 1961, when it was fully automated. Today, it functions via solar power and remote monitoring systems, visited only occasionally by maintenance technicians. The families of the vanished keepers struggled to rebuild their lives without closure. James Ducat's widow, Mary, was left to raise 4 children alone on a modest pension. She never remarried, maintaining until her death in 1932 that her husband would someday return. Thomas Marshall's mother reportedly kept a light burning in her window every night for 10 years after his disappearance. McArthur's wife, Christina, withdrew from public entirely, refusing all interviews and moving to the Scottish mainland. For modern visitors to the Flannan Isles, now a protected nature reserve accessible only with a special permit, the lighthouse stands as both a navigational aid and a monument to its lost keepers. Those who venture there report an unnerving silence that seems deeper than a mere absence of sound. Bird researchers who occasionally spend nights on the island speak of strange dreams, unexplained noises, and a persistent feeling of being watched. Perhaps this is merely a power of suggestion, the human mind imposing a pattern and meaning on random sensory inputs. Or perhaps, as the old Harbidian fishermen believed, there are indeed things in this world beyond our understanding. The sea keeps its secret well, and on Eilean Mòr, 3 men steeped into history, or perhaps out of it entirely, leaving behind only questions without answers, theories without proof, and a lighthouse whose beam continues to sweep across the dark waters, guiding sailors safely past the very spot where the 3 men and its keepers were lost forever to the deep.